All right, welcome everyone. It is 12:01, so we are going to jump in here because we have a lot of information to cover today, and we'll let people just join in as they're able to. My name is Laura Weiss. I am a program director here at the Maryland State Arts Council, and I am joined by my colleague and co-program director, Emily Sollenberger. And we're also so excited that Jackie Copeland, our president of the council, is also with us today. Thank you for being here, Jackie. So if you are here, you hopefully are here because you are in an on year for the Grants for Organizations GFO program. So we are going to walk through not only the application, but really the entire application process today so that we can talk through all of the various steps from start to finish. Before we jump in, just a couple of housekeeping things. We do have a pretty good sized group here. So we do ask that you please mute your device unless you are speaking. Also, please do not present to your screen. Emily is taking care of that today. As I mentioned before, it might be helpful to have something to jot down some notes during the meeting today. We are recording this session and it will be available on the website as well as these slides. We will also put on the website next week, so you will have access to them afterwards. We will hold the meeting to the established time, so we will wrap up by 1 o'clock. But of course, if there are questions afterwards, we are here to help you with those. Just a quick reference shot of Google Meet in case you are not familiar with this platform. I'll point out just a few important buttons to know about. Your microphone is down at the bottom, sort of all the way at the left. Emily is circling it there. That's how you can toggle that on and off for your microphone to be in use or not. The camera is the next one, same thing. You can be on screen or off screen. Next to that, you can turn on captions if needed. Do know that these are computer generated. Next is the raise hand function, which we will get into questions and answers towards the end of the session today. The present screen is the next one. Don't hit that. We don't want to have you present the screen. And finally, the three little dots are other options. So that's how you can format your screen and such. And the red button, avoid that until the very end. That's how you hang up the session. One other important thing to note is the chat function, which is being circled by Emily there, the little quotation box thing with a couple of lines. You can feel free to put in questions, comments, etc. in there as well. I'm going to read through the next couple of slides as our grounding documents, which we begin all of our meetings with. The first is our equity and justice statement. The arts celebrate our state's diversity, connect our shared humanity, and transform individuals and communities. The Maryland State Arts Council and its supporting collaborators are committed to advancing and modeling equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in all aspects of our organizations and across communities of our state. MSAC and its grantees are committed to embracing equity and non-discrimination regardless of race, religious creed, color, age, gender expression, sexual orientation, class, language, and/or ability. The Maryland State Arts Council has a vision to play an essential role ensuring every person has access to the transformative power of the arts. And we do that through our mission, which is to advance the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, diverse programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all of the people of Maryland. The Maryland State Arts Council has 5 goals associated with our current strategic plan, and those 5 goals are to increase participation, provide intentional support, build capacity, leverage connections, and bolster Maryland arts. And today, this session is really honing in on goal 2, which is to provide intentional support. We also begin all of our meetings with what we call our creative meeting actions. So these are ideas to keep in the back of your mind as we go through today's session. And that is to celebrate being in the space with other creative people, engage with everyone's presence as a gift, Acknowledge that together we know a lot. Enter the conversation with curiosity and inquiry. Share your idea and trust that it will be heard. Use I statements. Focus your language on the task at hand. Hold one another accountable with care. Apply yes and, I hear your idea and I'm going to add to it. And balance speaking and listening. And we do encourage you to avoid the use of pronouns in public meetings. Please introduce yourself by name when speaking and refer to each other by name during the meeting. And the final two slides here are just a little call out information for you. The first one is about our commitment to professional development. We have many different sessions that we offer, different types of professional development. From the beginning of the pandemic, March 2020, through the end of the last fiscal year in June, we have had close to 11,000 participants attend almost 300 virtual professional development offerings hosted by MSAC. So there are many different opportunities to engage. One that I will call out is our Coffee with the Council, with Jackie was there last week on Tuesday to help us host that. This is a really great networking opportunity that's available every Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. There are many other different professional development offerings happening, and you can sign up for those on our website. And the final little call out here at the beginning is to join us as a panelist. Some of you, I believe, who might be on this call right now, who have served as panelists before. We rely on our panelists to review applications through the process. All of you will engage with panelists in some way during the Grants for Organizations process this year. I don't believe that we currently have any call for panelists out, but there are about to be, I believe, 2 calls that will come out in the next couple of weeks. So if that's something that's of interest to you, it's a great opportunity to really get involved in the panel process, you know, really learn about the application, the rubric, how we go through all of that from start to finish. And there is compensation provided for your service. All right, Emily, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Laura. And good afternoon now, everybody. Great to have you all here. We are going to go through a quick agenda here, the review of the whole GFO program and the guidelines, as Laura mentioned at the beginning. We're then going to take a look at the process and the timeline of the full scope of the GFO program. We're going to spend some time in the application with the questions and the scoring rubric, and then save some time at the end for some Q&A. And again, just to note, this session is really focused on the on-year, the full application and panel process. If you're not in that year this year, it's still a great opportunity to listen in, but just wanted to make sure that that's clear that we're going through the full application for the on-year. So as a starting point to ground us a little bit more in the program, the purpose of the Grants for Organization program is really to provide operating support that strengthens and sustains Maryland's arts infrastructure. This current year, FY22, we awarded nearly $16 million in GFO support across the state, which is incredible. And I'm sure you all are recipients of that because you're here as on-year applicants. And just a reminder that the on-year application deadline is November 15th, 2021. You're going to hear it multiple times today. You've probably already heard it from us, and you're going to continue to hear from us to make sure that you know that you get your application in by 5 o'clock on November 15th. So who can apply? If you're a returning applicant, which many of you are in this session, you've already been accepted into the GFO program and have been in it. So congratulations. If you're a new applicant, which we just got through this process, the intent to apply for anybody who did not receive the previous fiscal year funding would need to submit a September 15th intent to apply. So we know that you're ready to come on board, and Laura and I go through those to accept them into the on-year application. So there will be a new group of new applicants that will also be in the on-year application this year. So the difference between on year and off year is a common question that we get throughout the year. So as a reminder, the GFO program has a 3-year cycle that is determined by your artistic discipline. So during your on year, which is the full application that includes a panel review, which also determines your panel score that goes into your funding formula, again, is 3-year cycle. So this year, for FY23 application coming up is music C, dance, and multidiscipline A. So since you're here, you're probably in one of those disciplines. Your discipline can change if it makes sense to you. So have a conversation with Laura or myself. If you think you should not be in your current discipline, we can always make those shifts during the year. The point of aligning you with a discipline-specific cycle is so we can have a group of panelists that have the expertise and experiences within your discipline. So you're being reviewed by somebody who is familiar with what you do, or a group of people that are familiar with what you do. So again, the on years are bolded. So FY23, you're going to be in an on year where you fill out that full complete application with a panel review. And then the 2 years in between, so for FY24 and 25, you would go into an off year. So that means you would fill out a shorter application. You'd still provide your financials, but your panel review score would carry through to those 2 off years, and your application would be due on December 15th rather than November 15th. So those of you that are in an on year this year, your next on year for the full application would then be for FY26. And I mentioned the panel score going into your funding formula. So this year for FY23, the funding formula remains the same for everybody. So we're looking at your total allowable income times a panel score times a cap allocation. So what that means is the total allowable income comes from you as the applicant. That is your last completed fiscal year financial statements that you provide in the application to us. So we pull that total allowable income number and put it directly into this funding formula. Then, since you're going through the panel review process this year, the panel will determine your score. And we'll go into this in more detail as well. So your panel score will be determined through this process this year for you. And then the cap allocation is the same for everybody this year. And it's a reflection of how much funding that the State Arts Council is allocating for this particular program. So last year, for example, we had $16 million, and we determined in order to get all of that $16 million, or very, 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 very close to it, the cap allocation was, I think, 7.125 or something like that. So we could get as much money out through this program as possible. So an example might look like if you have $500,000 of allowable income, you multiply that by your panel score. So for example, 90% times the average has been around 7 to 7.5. So say it's 7%, you're looking at a grant award of $31,500. And just a note here that we did recently announce some changes to the funding formula that will not be implemented until FY24, so next year's process. And we do have a separate info session on that particular topic on October 14th at 12 p.m. So just be on the lookout for that information. We're not going to go into detail about that today, but really look at the application and the process. And I think I'm going to pass this over to Laura.
Great, thanks, Emily. So what goes into the review process? We often get the question of, is it just the application? Is that all that it is? And it is a very comprehensive process that starts really today, and it runs all the way through the notification of the award decisions next summer. So we're going to walk through those different steps here. So the review process, it includes an initial review and score by the panel of your written application, which is submitted by the organization by November the 15th. There are also 2 what we call extension assignments. You'll hear those terms a couple times throughout this. 2 extension assignments that are completed by assigned panelists. One of those extension assignments is the artistic activity visit, and one is the in-depth conversation. And we'll go into details about what that means in just a moment. It also includes an application review and scoring of financials by MSAC staff, which is myself or Emily. So we go through your financial statement and we have a couple of questions to score your finances on, which we'll go through in just a moment with the rubric. All of these pieces culminate together in the panel meeting, which takes place in the early part of the spring, late March, early April. And the panel takes all of this information into account. There's a discussion about your application, about the extension assignments. All of that comes together in a point where the panelists are then able to resubmit their final scores. So once they kind of learn, they've had an initial impression through their first scoring of your application, through that panel meeting, they're learning more information from their fellow panelists. They're answering questions that they might have had. Then they're able to rescore the application to come to a final score. And that final score is how we then determine your panel score that goes into that funding formula. So to break down more information about the extension assignments, panelists will be assigned to complete extension assignments for each organization. Each organization will have one panelist conduct a site visit, which actually is equivalent to the artistic activity visit. We used old terminology there. And one panelist will conduct an in-depth conversation. So that means that you will have two separate panelists will conduct extension assignments, one for each. It's up to the panelist and the organization to schedule when these take place. So panelists will reach out to you to schedule these. This will be happening basically in February. It's February and early March is when those activities take place. So something just to kind of, keep in the back of your mind, think about what, artistic activities are happening during that time. You're really looking at early February through March, mid-March. What the artistic activity entails is that this is really an opportunity to provide evidence of the written application through an interaction that is guided by representatives of the organization. The experience will provide opportunities for the panelists to advocate for the great work of the organization or the program. I'm going to pause there because that's a really important word that's in there, and that's advocate. That's what the panelists are here to do. They are here to advocate for your organization, to be your greatest cheerleader. So that's a really great way to think of them. They are not the IRS coming into your organization, to find things that are incomplete or, something like that. They are your cheerleaders. So that's how we approach the panel process. That's how, the spirit of all of this is. So that artistic activity visit, it may include, in the past, this would have been all in person, but of course, the world is different now. So we have, different things to take into consideration. All of this can be either in person or virtual. It just, depends on what your organization is offering. It depends on your comfort level. It depends on the panelists' comfort level. So just bear that in mind. One is not better than the other. It is whatever you deem, is able to really show off your organization the best. But some examples include attendance at a performance, an exhibition, an event. That might be in person or that might be virtual. Again, all of these, virtual or in person, could be a meeting during which artifacts such as photos, videos, data, anecdotes from a recent artistic experience are shared with your panelists. A meeting during which the organization's website and or social media is collaboratively explored, providing highlights of artistic programming. So maybe some videos or other opportunities to see what your organization does best. or a meeting with artists that are associated with the organization to discuss the organization's artistic activities and programming. So as you can see, there's a lot of flexibility here in what, is termed the artistic activity visit. So we really do rely on the organization to guide what the what will be experienced by the panelist. But it's something, it is an artistic event, experience, programming. It's something so that they can relate that back to what is in your written application. The next one, so that's extension assignment number 1. The second one is an in-depth conversation. And that provides clarification of the written application by asking questions and engaging in conversation that surrounds content that could further support the work of the organization in alignment with the evaluation criteria. So this is an opportunity for the panelist to come in and have a meeting with you, with the board president, with the executive director, whoever you deem is the appropriate person or group of people. They're here to ask questions to clarify your application. So they might say, they might have a question about your creative process, and they're looking for those details. And again, this is so that they can be an advocate for you. So they can come back to that panel meeting and say, this written answer wasn't quite as clear as it could have been, but I have the answers now. Here's what it is. So that's the whole point, is to really gain that clarity so they can be your cheerleader in the panel meeting. This meeting can take place, again, in person. It can take place digitally, via Zoom or Google Meet or something like that, or by phone, whatever you decide as an organization and the panelist decides is the right call. And it's up to the organization to determine who takes part in this. Generally, we see the executive or managing director, the artistic director, perhaps a board president or another member of the board, perhaps a development director. It's up to you in terms of what makes sense.
Laura, I'm just going to pause for a couple of questions that are in the chat before we move forward.
Yeah.
Sarah asked, should the site visit be during a performance or during off hours? Is the goal to showcase the venue or answer in-depth questions? And do you recommend a particular strategy? I think you answered that with both slides, but Sarah, we can talk one-on-one. If you have any further questions, we can talk strategy there. And then Heidi asked if the panelist is willing, can they visit to include 2 experiences such as a performance and an art exhibition? And I think if the panelist is up for that, that can totally happen. Okay.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, so that's a lot of information to take in. I'm going to kind of basically reiterate it all here, but show it in a timeline so that you can see, where we're going. So it's October 1st, believe it or not. So you are at the top of this timeline right here. The application is now open within Smart Simple. So you can log into your Smart Simple account and find that under your funding opportunities. Again, I think we've said this maybe 5 times now. The deadline is November the 15th at 5:00 p.m. Everything must be complete and submitted within Smart Simple by that point. In December and January, that's the point in which the panelists are assigned to your application, and they are going through their first rounds of scoring independently online. They do it at home on their own time. You don't have any responsibilities at that point. They're doing their own thing. They're scoring the applications. Kind of at the same time, that's when Emily and I are also reviewing your application. We're reading through everything, and we're also reviewing and scoring your financials. If we have any questions about financials, we'll of course come to you during that point. In February through March 15th, that's the period in which the extension assignments take place, the artistic activity visits and the in-depth conversations. All of those must be complete by March 15th. This will be communicated by your panelists. Again, they're going to be in touch to do the scheduling with you so that it can happen during a time that makes sense for them and makes sense for you. But those are basically the 6 weeks that you're looking at, from early February to March 15th. Late March and early April is when the panel meetings occur by discipline. So there is one panel for dance, one panel for music C, and one panel for multidisciplinary A. And then we have our new organizations, which have their own panels, but those are the 3 that we are dealing with here today. The things that happen after the panel meeting that maybe you don't know about is after that, in May and June, we take the recommendations for funding to the council to look for approval for that. And the grant amounts are determined based on our budget. So that's when we take all of those ingredients and put them into the formula to determine what your grants are. And finally, to wrap up that timeline, after July 1st of next year is when notifications of grants are sent via Smart Simple. That typically happens in about mid-July, but it happens after July 1st. So once we are actually in FY23. In July and August, Emily and I go through all of your applications and all of the panelist feedback, and we prepare individualized feedback forms for all on-year applications. So sometime in the summer, July, August of next year, you will receive a form from one of the 2 of us that gives some recommendations for future applications, the feedback from the panelists, all in the spirit of strengthening the application for the next go round. And ongoing throughout, whenever you need it, we are available to answer questions at any time. We're here to provide support. We're here to meet with you, with your staff, with your board. And beyond the application, we're here to attend programs and events. We love to go out in the field and see things and experience things. So please keep us updated with invitations and events. We'd be happy to attend whenever our schedules allow. And 2 other dates, I'll wrap up in just a minute and hand it over to Emily. 2 other dates to just have on your radar. Every year, we have interim reports due on January 31st. So your FY22 interim report will be due on January 31st, 2022. And final reports, I think this actually might be a typo. I think it's August 15th. Your final reports are due on August 15th of every year. So your FY22 final report will be due on August 15th, 2022. And of course, you'll get reminders from us and reminders via Smart Simple. All right, Emily, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, more information coming your way. So we are now going to go through the application itself. So what the application includes, if this is just for familiarity, I know you all have been through this at one point, but it includes the contact and organizational information. The big chunk of it is going to be your narrative section, which includes 4 different sections with multiple questions, and we're going to get into that here next. It includes a financial section, attachments, and then your authorization signature. And then I've just noted here there's resources, and I just dropped a link into the chat box as well, that our guidelines have been posted for FY23. And there's also a narrative and rubric Word document that is posted under the application process header of that same link. So it is a little bit hidden, but look for that application process and scroll down, and then you can open up that Word document and use that as a draft. I know that's a little bit easier for folks rather than working directly in the system, especially if you're sharing the writing and resources with your team. So just note that that's there. And also, Sarah brought this up in the chat box as well. That also includes a small financial rubric that Laura and I use to determine our scoring of the financial documents only, not the narrative section, but just the financials. Okay, so I will start with section A, and then we're going to pass it back and forth. So with section A, this addresses why the work of your organization is important. So the first question includes what are the vision, mission, goals, and or values of your organization? And like I said, there's a rubric for each question. I've just listed the excellent to outstanding response, but the full rubric is in that document I just mentioned. And it's also built into the system, the excellent to outstanding score. So when you're looking at your vision, mission, goals, and values for the organization, we're looking for clear, specific, and thorough evidence of that vision, mission, goals, and or values within the answer to get full points. The second section, or the second question in this section, has to do with your mission, vision, goals, and values of the organization and how they've evolved over the last 2 years. So as you remember, we're in a 3-year cycle. So we like to hear what's happening, what's evolving, what growth is going on in the organization. So that excellent to outstanding response will look for clear, specific, and thorough explanation of that growth and evolution over the past 2 years. The third question is actually a two-parter that are not, these two A and B sections are not scored, but it's really important to get a clear picture because it helps to inform the panel of what they're looking at and informs the rest of the application and the questions. So 3A is looking at the geographic area of service that your organization is serving. So that would be listing your specific communities, counties, cities, or if you're a statewide organization. So we're looking at this response to help guide the panel with additional information throughout the application. And then 3B is brand new, just this year. So within your geographic area of service, we're asking you to identify the percentage of programming that's serving your community other than tuition paying constituents. So this is, we've determined that tuition paying means programming that includes a fee for service model, classes, camps, workshops. So something that somebody is paying for and receiving that service from your organization. And it's a quick drop down. It's going to give you the options of either including 0 to 25%, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, and 75 to 100. So this isn't necessarily a narrative piece, but it helps kind of inform again, the fee for service model and how much of your organization is in that type of area, and then those that you're serving beyond tuition paying. And there's, it doesn't matter. We want you to reflect what's true and for your organization at the time, again, to help inform the panelists moving forward. And the final part of section A, which we also get lots of questions about, but helps to tie up this entire section, is the chart. And the chart has changed throughout the years, and it's changed again a little bit this year. But we're looking for the chart to help tie together the rest of section A. So highlighting how your events and activities that you're planning connect to your vision, mission, goals, and values, and connecting to the constituents in your area and how you've defined those in your geographic area. So when you're looking at the chart, on the left-hand side, you're going to list your events and activities, and you have up to 20 rows to include this information. So a lot of times we know you all are doing so much, so we want you to consider kind of buckets of programming, if you will. So if you're doing, for example, there's the example of the main stage season. So rather than listing all of the shows that are on your main stage, you can just list the main stage season and answer each question in connection to that particular program. Or you might be doing a lot of educational programming, where you might want to list your adult programming as one section and youth programming as another, so on and so forth. So then in each box, we're asking you to connect that particular program to the second box over, how does each activity connect to the vision, mission, goals, and values? The next one over is to describe the public value or the importance and relevance of that activity to the constituents in your geographic area of service. Again, going back to that third question about your geographic area of service. The next box over is, how does each arts activity design to reach yet to be known constituents in your geographic area of service? And then if this is a new piece connected to the tuition paying constituents, If this particular activity is tuition-based, how does the activity reach beyond tuition-paying constituents? And if it's not, if it's an activity that's not tuition-based, that's okay. You just put not applicable. So that's a lot of information for A, but it really gets to the heart of your mission and why you do the work that you're doing. Okay, I'm going to pass it to you, Laura.
Thanks so much, Emily. So section B of the application is focused on how your organization designs its programs. And there are just two questions actually in section B. The first is to describe the creative process within your organization's programming and include a description of how artistic decisions are made, the creative process, and how the constituents of the geographic area of service are involved in the programmatic development and evaluation of the resulting artistic activities. So again, like Emily said, this is harkening back to that identified geographic area of service from before. The excellent to outstanding response here includes an explanation that clearly illustrates the creative process, which includes creative roles, responsibilities, and authentic constituent collaboration, where constituents are essential in the artistic decision-making process. The second question is focused on long-term or strategic planning, and that is to explain the process for long-term or strategic planning. If your organization does not have a long-term or strategic plan, how do you design programs and activities for the future or any steps towards a formalized plan? And how does this process align with your vision, mission, goals, and values? An excellent to outstanding response here includes clear and specific explanation of long-term or strategic planning process that directly connects with vision, mission, goals, and values. That was a brief one. I think that's over to you, Emily.
Okay, great. So section C, it addresses how your organization operates. And I believe these are all 5 questions, and I'm going to read these. But again, please know that this is all written down with the rubric on the website too that you can access. So the first question actually connects to the attachment section of the application. We're asking that you attach a graphic or a chart of the organization's staffing and board structure. So that would include your board members, your staff, your artists, volunteers, anybody that you consider part of that structure to make your organization move forward. Connect that into, we're really looking for a chart. And it does not have to be super designed or anything, but really just something that you can put together that shows the makeup of how everybody works together. So that excellent to outstanding response includes a clear and specific explanation of your organization's staffing and board structure. The second question is, how is your staffing and board structure currently successful? So specifically looking at board staff, artists, volunteers, etc., how they're successful. So an excellent to outstanding response includes a clear and specific explanation of indicators of success for staffing and board. The third is what staffing, board, and or financial challenges affect the operations of your organization, and how are these challenges routinely identified and addressed? So what we're looking for here is a clear and specific commitment to regularly identifying and addressing staffing, board, and or financial challenges. And I'll just note here, it's okay to address that you have challenges. We're just looking that you can identify those challenges and that you have some sort of commitment to addressing those particular challenges. We do want to know, and it helps us to identify how we can help you as well. The fourth question is, what procedures are in place for monitoring and approving the organization's finances? So here we're looking for a detailed procedure of monitoring and approving finances, who's involved, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And then the fifth question is based on demographics. How does your staffing reflect the population of your geographic area of service? So again, looking at your board, staff, artists, and volunteers, how that clearly reflects your constituency of your geographic area of service. So again, going back to section A, where you identified who's your geographic area of service, how then does your board and staff and volunteers reflect that? And you can also use the link here. It's the United States zipcodes.org link to help find demographics for your areas as well. And I'm going to pass to you, Laura, for the last section.
All right, thank you. We're in the home stretch of the application here, everyone. So narrative section D addresses how your organization evaluates what it does. There are 3 questions here under this section. The first is, what is the sensory or emotional experience hoped to be achieved through your organization's arts programming? And the excellent to outstanding response is that the programming process directly considers intended sensory and emotional impact. The second is, how do programmed arts activities assume risk by considering non-dominant norms, values, narratives, standards, or aesthetics? And the excellent to outstanding response here is that the programming process indicates regular consideration of non-dominant norms, values, narratives, standards, and aesthetics. And the final question here is to please give one recent example of the organization's greatest success and explain why it is considered successful. So this is a fun kind of question that you get to talk about, a great success that has happened for your organization. And that excellent to outstanding response is that the evaluation clearly articulates why a specific program or event was determined to be successful. And I do want to just point out that there is a brief glossary available if you go to the website under that application process dropdown, where there is the FY23 narrative questions and rubric. If you go to, I believe it's the last page or second to last page, there are a few terms in there that just might be helpful reference points of a couple of different terms that are used throughout the application, just so you know. All right. Emily, you want to take financials?
Sure. So in the financial section, similar to last year, in response to the ongoing impact of the state of emergency, each organization that applies, whether you're in an on year or an off year, has the option to use financials from your most completed fiscal year, which would be FY21 or calendar year 20, depending on your organization. Or you can use financial information again that was included in your FY22 application. So whatever you submitted last year, which would have been an off-year application most likely for many of you, you can choose whatever financials provide the best financial picture this year. And again, that's just our continued support for the impact that's been happening over the past 18 months or so. So if you have any questions about what financials to use, again, we really want you to use the best financial picture that you have. And if you've selected to reuse your financials from last year's application, so the FY22 application, you will still need to complete the financial table that's in the application with your FY21 and calendar year 20 information, but it'll only be used for data collection purposes. So again, everybody has to fill out a chart with FY21 or calendar year 20. It just depends which financials that you choose to be selected for funding formula. So it's a little bit, it can be a little bit confusing, but please touch base with Laura and I if you want to talk through which might be the best fit for you. So again, there's a choice for which financials you'd like to use, and you will either way have to complete the chart with your FY21 or calendar year 20 information. If you select to use the financials from last year's application, you do not need to resubmit. We'll just pull that information because it's already approved. So again, just a couple of choices for you all to ensure that you're being supported the best way possible. The staff evaluation of financials includes Financial information indicates a strong commitment to multiple diverse income streams. The organization does not display any significant financial changes that are not supported with programmatic cause in alignment with the organization's mission and vision. And then we're also looking at if the budget size indicates over $600,000 that the organization is operating with a cash reserve of at least 1 year. So these are the three pieces that Laura and I look at specifically at the financial statements. It's not part of the narrative review of our panelists. It's separate, so we know exactly what organization is looking at what. So again, this is the piece where you'd want to touch base with one of us to have more detailed conversation, or if you have questions about your financials this year. And again, the rubric for the financials is in the narrative Word document that's on the website as well, if you'd like to access that. And I can just continue with this, Laura, too. So within your financial statement, you must provide the corresponding information if you're using the FY21 or calendar year 20, so new financials for this year. If your total allowable income is under $600,000, you just need to submit a financial statement that's signed by your professional accountant or a fiscal officer for the organization. So that would be something like your profit and loss statement is only if you're under $600,000 of allowable income. That's all we need is the financial statement that's signed off. If you're over $600,000 of allowable income, we're going to be looking for your most completed fiscal year audit. So that's prepared by an auditing firm. So the audit must be submitted on the application deadline date. So when it comes to November 15th, we'll be looking for the audit that's completed for that last completed fiscal year. Again, if you have any questions or concerns about what financial documents you should be submitting, connect with Laura and I, and we can go through that all together. Okay. Laura, I'm going to hand it back to you if you want to talk about the attachments.
Sure. Yeah, just a couple of other attachments in addition to that financial statement, if needed, is that you will need to also submit a graphic of the organization's staffing structure. So even if you don't have full-time paid staff, we would be looking at the structure that includes your board, volunteers, of course, any staff, if you have them, artists, showing that full organizational structure. You'll also need to share your IRS letter of determination and also a signed W-9, which allows us to process your grant at the end of the process. And just a couple of kind of parting thoughts here before we open up for a brief question and answer. Some helpful hints when it comes to application feedback. So Emily and I are available to review your application and offer feedback. We're happy to do that, to take a look at some of your responses. If you have questions about them, we can offer feedback in advance. So you can email us to request that feedback on any section of the draft that you'd like us to review. We do ask that you allow for up to 10 business days to receive written feedback. And just to ensure that things can be completed prior to the deadline, we do ask that you request any application feedback no later than November the 1st. We're always here, though, to meet and to discuss not only your draft, but any questions that you might have about the application, about the process itself. We're here to help however we can through that. So you can feel free anytime to call us, to email us. We're happy to have that conversation with you, with anybody at your organization. And I believe that is it for our content. So we do have a couple of minutes here that we would love to open up for question and answers. I know that there has been some questions answered through the chat, but if there are questions that anyone would like to bring up for the good of the group here, please feel free to, let's use the raise hand function just because we do have a pretty good sized group here, and we'd be happy to help. Any questions? We know this is a lot of information that we flew through in about 50 minutes. Katie.
Hi.
Hi there.
Just can you speak generally to how you're incorporating COVID and the pandemic and kind of into your assessment and how we address this? I mean, several of us are coming off of what's going to be 2 years of severely impacted programming, climbing out of this. There's not a specific question about that on the application. How is this incorporated into the whole thing?
Sure. Emily, do you want to take it? Sorry.
I mean, I can start and we can probably play off of each other like we normally do. But I think, you know, we're all very much aware that everybody's in this very challenging state and, you know, rebuilding, you know, some are moving into programming, some are still looking internally at their structures. So we're really looking at, you know, in particular with this application, going through the process of kind of answering to the best of what's going on with your organization, and do address COVID and maybe what changes have occurred. If you're looking internally at strategic planning or long-term planning in a new way, if something is informed how you do your work now that might shift. You know, we've all pivoted to virtual programming in different ways. Maybe you've seen some shifts that you're going to implement moving forward, but please do know that, you know, the panelists will be, are definitely aware, and we'll talk about that in their panel training, along with, I think as a sector, we're very much aware, but, you know, it's considering these questions and answering them to the best of your ability. And even if you're considering some of these questions for the very first time, it's really just taking the steps to write down that you are thinking about them, and it's something you're working toward. So I hope that helps to kind of as a starting point.
Thanks.
Sarah.
My question is related to state funding that's been pandemic support. Some of our pandemic support funding is counted in FY21, and some of it will be counted in FY22. I'm not exactly sure if there's a way to indicate that in the application and whether it matters to you all, but it does change it changes the allowable income and the overall equation. So I guess I just wanted to hear from you guys about if you have just about the relief funding and how that plays in or doesn't.
Yeah, I think so. If you do decide to update your financials to use the FY21 calendar year 20 option, I mean, if they're a part of it, you know, they would be shown within within that statement. So yes, that could play into you know, what your total ends up being. I don't think, Emily, I don't have all of the allowables and non-allowables in front of me right now. But I don't think that there's anything that has to be indicated in terms of the emergency funding that you may have received. Correct, Emily? There's that.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think, you know, a lot of the loans have turned into forgivable, which we know that turns into contributed income. There's still that point of if it's state funding, it cannot be part of your match. So if you did get state relief funding, you know, you could not include that. A lot of times that the math it doesn't matter. But federal funding could be used in those sorts of things. The one thing I will note that's changed this year in the financials would be restricted funding. So if you see any kind of restricted funding, that's going to be considered non-allowable this year per a discussion that we've had with the auditing department with Commerce. So just make a special note about that. So and that goes with any kind of restricted funding, whether it's recovery funding or not, it, you know, your regular income is allowable, that restricted would be not allowable. Heidi.
Great. So just to ask some clarity on that, Emily, if you're saying restricted dollars, if you have money that is temporary restricted for program support, that, and it's all within the same fiscal year, I would assume that should still be allowable.
It depends when it's released from restriction. So that's where
Right.
we're really looking
Yeah.
for that to be allowable. It could be
Right.
included in your overall finances, but if it's restricted for another year, you know,
Oh,
if
yeah,
it's released, then yeah. But if it's specifically, I'm sorry, that's a better term. If it's
Yes.
if it's restricted to program use within your fiscal year, that's
Yes.
okay. But if it's
Okay, good.
restricted to another year, that's where it
Correct.
becomes not allowable.
Yeah, no, that, and I think it's always been, at least from what I understand, that's always been the case. But thank you for the clarity, because otherwise,
Yeah,
with a lot of program support, and my income would be like shot.
Yeah. Sorry about that. Temporarily restricted. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's always
Oh,
been
sorry.
like that, Heidi. It's we added some clarity though around some of the language so, for the
Yeah,
audit team.
Sorry, I didn't mean to raise my hand again. I was trying to mute myself.
All good. Time for maybe one last question. Anything for the group? Well, certainly this is a ton of information to kind of digest and go through. So, you know, take your time, go through the slides, listen to the recording again, whatever is helpful for you. And then when those questions come up, you can feel free to reach out to myself, to Emily, and, you know, we're happy to talk you through whatever you need, anything to support you. So if there are no other questions, I'm just glancing around to make sure I'm not missing anything. Then I think, wow, we end it with 3 minutes to spare. So thank you everyone so much. Enjoy this absolutely beautiful first day of October, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and we'll be in touch soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much. Bye.